Part 1. Why does the whole world watch NVIDIA earnings? Doesn't it feel like the entire world gets nervous whenever NVIDIA reports earnings now?
Pretty much. Recently, NVIDIA has started to feel less like one company and more like the market itself.
Seriously, on earnings day, every finance timeline suddenly turns into NVIDIA-only mode.
And behind that is something called the SOX index. SOX stands for the Philadelphia Semiconductor Index.
I genuinely thought SOX was about socks for years.
In finance circles, it basically means the king of semiconductor indexes.
So, what companies are inside it?
Pretty much, the semiconductor all-stars. NVIDIA, AMD, Broadcom, Micron, Qualcomm, Intel, ASML, and other major chip companies.
That's basically the Avengers of the AI industry.
Pretty close. Recently, many investors now see SOX as the best way to measure AI market enthusiasm.
Was it always that important?
Not really. In the past, SOX mostly reflected PCs, smartphones, and consumer electronics. But now it is changing. SOX is increasingly becoming an AI infrastructure index.
Which explains why NVIDIA earnings can move the entire index.
Exactly. According to Reuters, semiconductor companies now account for a very large share of the S&P 500, and semiconductors generated a huge share of 2026 market cap gains.
At that point, the US stock market basically becomes an AI semiconductor market.
And the growth has been extraordinary.
How extreme are we talking?
According to Reuters, the SOX index surged more than 55% during parts of 2026.
55% for a major index is insane. That starts sounding less like investing and more like mania.
There is definitely a lot of excitement. Markets now react to NVIDIA earnings almost like they are reading the economic forecast for the entire AI industry. Reuters reported that NVIDIA earnings could move roughly $350 billion in market value in a single day.
$350 billion moving in one earnings event. That is bigger than the GDP of some countries.
Investors are not only watching NVIDIA profits anymore. They are trying to read AI data center demand, HBM shortages, AI infrastructure spending, and electricity demand.
So, NVIDIA earnings basically became the economic weather forecast for AI civilization.
That is honestly pretty accurate. SOX is no longer just a semiconductor index. It is increasingly becoming an AI infrastructure index.
Part 2. Is NVIDIA really the center of the AI bubble? But honestly, doesn't this feel a little scary too?
How so?
Sometimes it feels like anything with AI in the name instantly goes up. That starts looking bubble-like.
A lot of investors are debating exactly that. Markets almost feel frozen, waiting for NVIDIA earnings.
That is no longer a normal earnings report at that point.
One fascinating thing about SOX is this. It looks diversified, but a surprisingly small number of companies now drive most of the movement.
So it is not really the whole semiconductor industry booming. It is more like a few AI giants pulling everything upward.
Exactly, especially companies deeply tied to AI infrastructure, such as NVIDIA, Broadcom, AMD, and TSMC.
SOX is starting to feel less like a semiconductor index and more like an AI expectation index.
That is actually pretty accurate, and money is now spreading beyond GPUs themselves.
Like HBM and networking?
Exactly. Broadcom has grown rapidly because of AI networking, custom AI accelerators, and hyperscale data center infrastructure.
So, investors are not just buying NVIDIA anymore. They are buying the world required to support NVIDIA.
That is one of the defining characteristics of today's SOX rally.
But why did SOX become this globally important in the first place?
Because semiconductors are no longer just tech components. They are becoming the foundation of almost every major industry. In the past, chips mostly powered PCs, smartphones, and electronics, but now semiconductors sit at the center of AI, robotics, autonomous driving, cloud infrastructure, defense, and industrial automation.
So, SOX is basically tracking where the world is placing its technological bets.
Exactly. Investors are also using SOX as a way to monitor AI capital expenditure. According to Reuters, big tech AI-related investment could approach $700 billion in 2026.
$700 billion. That stops sounding like tech investment and starts sounding like civilization-scale infrastructure spending.
That is one of the most important shifts happening right now. The bottlenecks are no longer limited to GPUs. The industry is also dealing with HBM shortages, CoWoS shortages, electricity constraints, and data center shortages.
Which means the AI race is increasingly becoming who can build the largest physical infrastructure, not just who has the smartest model.
Exactly. Today's SOX is increasingly functioning like a construction progress bar for AI civilization itself.
Part 3. Why do semiconductor indexes move so differently? But SOX is not the only semiconductor index, right?
Exactly. And even though they are all semiconductor related, they are actually tracking completely different worlds.
That sounds weirdly philosophical for a stock discussion.
But it is important. In today's market, understanding where AI money is flowing matters more than ever. SOX itself is an index. but many investors actually buy semiconductor exposure through ETFs like SMH and SOXX.
Right. Kind of like buying the whole package instead of individual stocks.
Exactly, but even those ETFs behave very differently. For example, SMH is heavily concentrated in giant AI infrastructure companies like NVIDIA, TSMC, and Broadcom.
So, SMH is basically full-power AI infrastructure mode.
Pretty much. Meanwhile, SOXX is more diversified across semiconductor companies.
I used to think semiconductor stocks are semiconductor stocks.
That distinction matters now because today's market increasingly rewards AI bottleneck companies. Investors increasingly care less about who uses AI and more about who supplies the infrastructure AI cannot function without.
What's funny is that this whole AI boom started with ChatGPT is amazing. But now, we spend half the discussion talking about power grids, factories, cooling systems, and server infrastructure.
That is because the current AI boom increasingly resembles industrial expansion rather than just a software revolution. Reuters recently reported that Google and Blackstone are involved in a massive AI-focused cloud infrastructure initiative worth around $25 billion.
$25 billion for infrastructure alone. That sounds closer to building a country than launching a tech product.
Exactly. The industry is facing GPU shortages, HBM shortages, electricity shortages, and data center shortages all at once.
So, AI is not just competing for algorithms anymore. It is competing for physical resources.
That is one of the most important structural shifts happening right now. Watching SOX today is increasingly about watching which version of the future the world is investing in.
Part 4. Final thoughts. SOX became the thermometer of AI civilization. At first, I thought this was just a story about a semiconductor stock index. But now it feels more like we have been talking about where the entire world is heading.
That is exactly what makes SOX so interesting today. In the past, SOX mostly reflected PC demand, smartphone cycles, and consumer electronics. But now its meaning is changing. Modern AI is no longer just about cool AI apps. Now, the entire ecosystem matters. GPUs, HBM, CoWoS, data centers, electricity, and cooling infrastructure.
And capital is flowing into all of it simultaneously.
Exactly. That is why SOX increasingly behaves less like a semiconductor index and more like an AI infrastructure index.
What is fascinating is that the market is not simply rewarding AI companies. It is rewarding companies controlling the bottlenecks of AI civilization itself.
That is a very important point. Investors are focusing on companies like NVIDIA, Broadcom, TSMC, SK Hynix, Micron, and ASML. Because they control critical infrastructure layers.
So the market is increasingly asking who can actually build AI civilization, not just who talks about AI.
Exactly. As AI expands into AI agents, robotics, autonomous systems, and video generation, the required infrastructure could become even larger.
Which means SOX is no longer simply tracking chip demand. It is tracking how aggressively humanity is investing in the AI future itself.
That is probably the best way to understand it. Years ago, people said the internet changed the world, but now AI infrastructure itself may be starting to reshape civilization.
It is funny. We started with a stock index and somehow ended up talking about the construction of an entirely new industrial era.
And honestly, that may be exactly what is happening. Let's explore the world of AI and semiconductors together again in the next video.
Thanks for watching today's video.